Welcome to the Modern American Library. We hope to enlighten you with knowledge regarding a crucial aspect of America's history, the Great Society. Without further ado, let us begin. November 22nd, 1963, hundreds of thousands of American citizens were shaken when news of President John F. Kennedy's assassination made its way through almost every television and every household. Kennedy had advocated a new frontier in hopes of achieving equality for all Americans. Following the president's assassination, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn into presidency aboard Air Force One. Lyndon B. Johnson was raised in Stonewall, Texas, and graduated from Southwest Texas State Teachers College. He served in both the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. He was the first member of Congress to volunteer to join the military during World War II and served as a lieutenant commander from December of 1941 to the summer of 1942. Johnson, also an advocate of Kennedy's New Frontier, shared his vision of America during a 1964 commencement address at the University of Michigan, a vision he called the Great Society.
The Great Society rests on abundance and liberty for all. It demands an end to poverty and racial injustice, to which we're totally committed in our time. But that is just the beginning.
The Great Society served to abolish poverty and racial injustice in the nation. Johnson's top priority during this period of domestic programs was civil rights. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibited the legal discrimination of race, religion, and origin in federal programs and employment offices. Though initially the act did not call for the abandonment of sex discrimination, the idea was proposed by Howard W. Smith, a Southern congressman who believed that introducing the idea would cause the whole bill to collapse. However, a majority of women in the House of Representatives supported the idea, and sex discrimination was also prohibited as part of the bill. The Civil Rights Act also provided for the formation of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also known as EEOC, a federal agency targeted towards investigating complaints based on race, religion, origin, sex, and age in employment offices. Because the EEOC did not focus on sex discrimination in workplaces as much, the National Organization for Women was formed in 1966 to enforce the legal changes made under the Civil Rights Act. In addition, a civil rights organization known as the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, headed by Martin Luther King Jr., had placed voting rights as one of their key priorities. Despite the 15th Amendment, created in 1870, prohibiting states from denying a male citizen the right to vote based on race, and despite the 19th Amendment, prohibiting states from denying the right to vote based on sex, many black citizens were still unable to vote due to literacy tests. In early March of 1965, protesters in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference had attempted to march from Selma, Alabama, all the way to Montgomery. The peaceful protesters were forced to confront a violent army of state troopers who used brutal attacking methods, such as tear gas and electric cattle prods. As a result, in 1965, President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, banning literacy tests and the use of poll taxes in state elections. The Voting Rights Act guaranteed the right to vote to all African Americans, proving as a victory for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
In Phoenix, Arizona, a man named Ernesto Miranda was arrested after being charged of robbery, kidnapping, and rape. During interrogation, Miranda confessed to the crime, but was not aware of his Fifth Amendment rights prior to being interrogated. Because the police had not informed Miranda that he had the right to an attorney, the Supreme Court found that his right against self-incrimination had been violated, establishing what is today known as the Miranda rights.
Lyndon B. Johnson won the election of 1964 against Republican candidate Barry Goldwater and continued to expand his Great Society. One of the primary issues Johnson's Great Society attempted to resolve was the war on poverty. In 1964, the Economic Opportunity Act established the Office of Economic Opportunity to determine the root causes of poverty. The act sparked the formation of several different community action agencies to allow for those in poverty to participate in the Great Society agenda. Because many programs were enacted on the state and local level, governors were able to veto grants they felt were inappropriate. Successful programs such as Head Start and Upward Bound focused on educating students as early as preschool to students in high school preparing for college. The Job Corps began as a mission to educate young adults between the ages of 16 and 24 and provided them with academic training. The idea of the Volunteers in Service to America, or VISTA, originated from John F. Kennedy as a domestic version of the Peace Corps. VISTA was designed to increase employment opportunities for those who felt they could enhance the educational programs for those in poverty. Additionally, by expanding the already established food stamp program, Johnson aimed at improving nutrition levels among low-income families. The Food Stamp Act of 1964 provided a foundation for agriculture and allowed for an increase of sales in grocery stores in all parts of the country. To contribute towards the development of urban areas, the Model Cities program formed to quell violence in cities regarding racial issues. The Department of Housing and Urban Development was in charge of there being cooperation amongst urban areas. But as time progressed, Model Cities greatly relied on citizen participation and was not able to collect sufficient funding amounts from the government.
During the 1960s, an increase in attention towards healthcare had occurred, and in 1965, President Johnson had established two of the country's most prominent medical programs, Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare was launched to provide healthcare for the elderly, particularly ages 65 and older. Medicare consisted of 4 health insurance plans. Part A hospital insurance plan. Part B, a medical insurance plan. Part C, a medical advantage plan. And Part D, a prescription drug coverage plan. Medicaid was founded to provide health insurance for the poor. States were required to offer Medicaid to all of those who relied on public assistance, and the federal government paid the states 50 to 80% of the state's Medicaid cost. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 was proposed by Emanuel Seller of New York and Senator Philip Hart. It abolished the national origins quota system that had previously existed in the United States. As a result, a new immigration policy was made to reunite immigrants with their families as well as to increase the number of skilled workers in the country.
Along with battling the causes of poverty and seeking to achieve civil rights for all citizens, the Johnson administration also aimed to simply improve everyday life. The National Endowment for the Arts and Humanities promoted scholarships in the humanitarian fields, including literature, journalism, and history, and encouraged an increase in art shows and galleries displaying the innovative sides of American artists. Grants were given to cultural establishments such as museums and were sometimes even given to individuals. The Higher Education Act of 1965 stresses the significance of college education. The act increased federal funding to certain universities, provided loans to students attending college, and created scholarships. The Teachers' Corps were created to improve elementary and secondary education systems in low-income districts. Regarding the safety of driving on roads and highways, the National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act formed after the publication of Ralph Nader's Unsafe at Any Speed. The book accuses car manufacturers for failing to include or emphasize safety features and for focusing too much on comfort in riding the cars.
If you're like most people who are interested in the Corvair, you want to know what it can do in action, out on the road. You want proof that the Corvair can deliver the goods, give you more of what you're looking for in a compact car.
Therefore, the National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act set up the National Highway Safety Bureau to combat the increasing number of deaths that were occurring on the roads. Seatbelts were required for every passenger and side view mirrors became mandatory.
The Johnson administration also put a great deal of emphasis on preserving nature. On September 3, 1964, President Johnson signed into law the Wilderness Act. The act founded the legal definition of wilderness as being an area where the earth and its community of life are untrammeled by man, where man himself is a visitor who does not remain. 9.1 million acres of land were recognized as wilderness. First Lady Claudia Alta Taylor Johnson, known to many as Lady Bird Johnson, was a huge advocate for outdoor beauty. She supported the cleanings of city parks, planting trees and gardens, and decreasing the amount of pollution being caused by manufacturing. In 1965, Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Highway Beautification Act in an attempt to limit the number of billboards and junkyards along highways. The Air and Water Quality Acts further demonstrated the impact the Great Society had on the environment by supervising pollution within the atmosphere.
Though the Great Society was appreciated in many parts of the country, many critics believed that the federal government was given too much authority. Despite their opinions, the Great Society triumphed in several different ways regarding civil rights, providing assistance to the poor, and improving the nation, making it a more efficient and secure place to live in. Here is some additional information on the events that took place during the era of the Great Society. Many children, due to living in poverty, were unable to get all the meals they needed each day. Many of these children received all their meals during school. Therefore, in order to guarantee that school lunch programs were providing healthy food items, the Child Nutrition Act was established, also creating the school breakfast program. In 1967, the court case of Loving v. Virginia prohibited laws preventing interracial marriage in states. The Fair Packaging and Labeling Act placed regulations on the labels being printed on consumer products. The label must identify the product, the manufacturer, and the net quantity of contents. In 1960, the New York Times published an article titled "Heed Their Rising Voices," defending MLK Jr. against the Montgomery Commissioner of Public Safety, L.B. Sullivan. Sullivan claimed the article was factually incorrect and ruined his reputation, and the case established the actual malice standard, which requires the plaintiff to prove the publisher knew the information being published was false.